She's looking at me, looking down. Hello, everybody out there in Facebook land, joining us live today for our regular segment webinar series with the Hispano Chamber. My name is Shannon. I'm super excited about our panel today. But before we get started, I just want to remind everybody we are in the middle of July, which is our trade series month. Trade Builds New Mexico. We've had a great partnership with the LIBRE the LIBRE Initiative, excuse me, and Americans for Prosperity. So we're very excited to continue that this week and next week. So anybody that is out there watching that is thinking, do I have a business that even makes sense in international waters in any way? Is there an import-export possibility? Do I have a product or a service that I could maybe think about growing and scaling my business on another level? This is for you. If you're a consumer who doesn't quite understand how trade impacts you, this is for you. So these series are set forth to help us and the community understand how important the impact trade is on our state and on our community. So just giving you guys all a second to log on, but we are excited and thankful to the LIBRE Initiative for being our supporting sponsor this month for this series. And also a big shout out to our partners at New Mexico Tech, Carlos Romero, who has been amazing to us over the past 4 months of this webinar series that has taken wings of its own. And we really appreciate their support on this project during this time. So thank you to those little elves. And of course to Angelique, who's in the background, always live on Facebook. If you guys have any questions, just post them. She'll make sure they show up in our chat and we'll work with you guys on those. And if you have questions afterwards, that is fine too. At the end of this call, we're gonna point out how to get a hold of Ruben and his team and how you can maybe even be featured on the website and some of the great things that they're doing with this Trade Builds New Mexico team. So with that being said, we want to start today. We're going to start with an introduction of the panel. Today's topic is innovation, and it can go in so many directions, but we have a very diverse group today. So we're super excited. So I'm going to start it off with Burley, who is a part of this team, and we're excited to have you, Burley. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Thanks, Shannon. It's great to be here. Thanks again for hosting us. And very excited to sponsor these series. Trade Builds New Mexico is an important conversation to be had in the times we're at. COVID makes it extra hard for every business. And right now, we're all looking to find ways to maximize our opportunities, to innovate the products we use, to connect the marketplaces that make a difference right now. The margins can be compressed. There's so many challenges in finding the landing path going forward. And it makes sense to be talking about how beneficial trade is in light of the conversations that we're seeing around tariffs and the constrictions that the government's placing onto the businesses who are trying to get the products to us. So Americans for Prosperity, I'm the state director. What we do is look to empower the individual and break through the barriers that stand in their way so that we have a mutually beneficial society where the individual flourishes. So I'm very excited to be here today. Looking forward to the topic in the panel. And thanks again, Shannon, for having me.
Thank you, Burley. Again, a partner all month. We have a few more of these, so we're excited to learn from you every single day. And moving over to my right, Ruben, if you'll jump in, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Thank you, Shannon. This has been an absolutely awesome time. It's been an absolutely awesome series that we've been able to put together with you guys. And we are just so excited to have had the opportunity to sponsor it. And we're really excited, especially about all the things that we've learned thus far and still the things that we're going to be learning and talking about in the few webinars that we still have left. A few of the things that I want to mention. My name is Ruben. Ruben Guajardo. I am the Community Engagement Director for the LIBRE Initiative New Mexico. For those of you who don't know, what we do is primarily we focus primarily on the Hispanic community here in New Mexico, but New Mexicans at large. And we focus on breaking barriers in that community, whether they be external or internal barriers, like not knowing English or not having access to certain things like the system in order to start a business. So all of those kinds of things we focus on and helping the community to reach their full potential. It's been amazing to see what we've been able to accomplish in the time that I've been with the organization. We've been members of the chamber for a long time and very excited to see this partnership even grow. And I'm really excited about what we've been able to accomplish this last month. One of the barriers that we see that a lot of Hispanic consumers and business owners here in New Mexico have to deal with is that of trade and tariffs and trade barriers. And so we've learned quite a bit, and I'm really excited about today's topic, which is innovation. I'm excited about our expert panelists that we have on today, and I'm excited to hear from all of them. It's going to be really awesome.
Thank you, Ruben. And speaking of community partners and members, and definitely a regular with the chamber, I'm going to continue to move to my right, and that's Mr. Ryan Flynn. Ryan, if you could introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Ryan Flynn, the head of the New Mexico Oil and Gas Association, and we represent about 1,000 members who are involved in the oil and gas industry, from the people who do drilling and exploration and production, all the way to the people who are selling you gas at the gas station. So we are involved at every aspect of the oil and gas industry. New Mexico is a vibrant oil and gas producing state. Even in the midst of an economic downturn, we're still producing billions of dollars of revenue for New Mexico. I run our group. We do quite a bit of work on a technical front with respect to working on different regulations and making sure we have the industry is represented in terms of any types of proposals or regulatory issues. We also do quite a bit of work in supporting industry's roles throughout communities in the state. And so my job is to work with a great staff and try to empower some of our good partners like the Hispano Chamber of Commerce. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ryan. We look forward to hearing from you. And speaking of Hispano Chamber, we have a little bit of royalty with us today. We're very excited to introduce you to Bob Sachs, who's joining us. Bob, if you'll tell us who you are and what you do, a longtime partner and with the chamber here. So we're excited to have you, Bob.
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. Yeah, great to be part of this, and thanks for having me. Yeah, I've been associated with the chamber for, 15 years or so. I was the one of the chairpersons for a while. I don't remember what year that was because that was 10,000 burritos ago. But anyway, great organization. Love you guys and keep doing what you're doing. And so I'm the president and CEO of Team Technologies, the founder of the company and the founder of other innovation technology companies that we've been developing over the years. And a lot of those are, we're talking to overseas people and, trying to figure out the lay of the land, and it depends on the industry that you're working in. And so we take a lot of technologies that are at a low, what they call a technology readiness level. And a lot of these technologies come out of the Sandy National Labs and other places. And then what we've tried to do is then take those up that technology readiness level and prepare those technologies for a market. And we've got to be very careful not to fall into the trap of just saying, gosh, we have a great technology, and so people are going to stand in line to buy that thing. You've got to develop it, and you've got to let the market drive the technology. So we've really tried to pay attention to the market side of it and say, let's not just do technology for the sake of technology. We got to do it for a purpose. And we've got some great technologies that we're working on, some in oil and gas, in fact, and so we're really excited about those. And so anyway, thanks for having me, and great panel.
Thanks, Bob. And we're going to hear more about that technology innovation coming up. And rounding out our great panel today, we have Mr. Webb Johnson. Webb, if you could do the same, introduce yourself, tell us about your company.
Thank you, Shannon. My name is Webb Johnson. I'm the Director of Business Development for Pajarito Powder. We're an 8-year-old startup that's focused on a materials science solution for hydrogen fuel cells for the automotive industry. It's basically a pretty high-tech product for the evolution of electric transportation.
So we have a lot of techies in the house today, so that's really good. Always a great opportunity to learn. Really excited. So we're going to kind of jump into this. When we first met with the team from Trade Builds New Mexico, there was some talk about how we're going to pick our topics and what we're going to do. And this topic of innovation really had everybody's minds going in so many directions. Innovation it can happen in so many different industries in so many different ways. And so we want to tackle some of that today. So I'm going to start off with Burley, because I want you kind of to set the tone for us a little bit today about how innovation affects trade and the importance of that. And then we're going to kind of go around the panel and talk about innovation in New Mexico and what they're doing inside that little innovation capsule. So let's start with Burley.
Great. Thanks, Shannon. So it's a fun topic for me. It's one of my favorites. I spent many years trading the marketplaces, and the global system of currency exchange and commerce is a fascinating place. On the panel today, you guys have oil and gas. Recently, they started exporting, and that's a fantastic space for them to empower the world, to power the world. You have technologies coming out of the 2 national labs, which we're blessed to have. It's a unique thing. Not many states have one of them, much less 2. And around the world, our high-tech capacity in New Mexico specifically is something that globally is interesting to countries, to businesses that are in the United States and around the world. And so we also have Pajarito powder. They have something going on in cars. And last time I checked, those cars exist around the world. So people around the world want Pajarito powder, and they want oil and gas, and they want the technologies that we develop here in the national labs. So it's a great conversation. It's a highlight of how many different unique places are happening, how many different unique businesses and ideas are innovating here in New Mexico. And it's so hard to quantify every one of them. You just have to get out of the way and let that magic happen. And the innovation curve is only stymied by the government when it decides to pick winners and losers, when it decides to divert the money where it wants it. And anytime you impose tariffs on one sector or another, you artificially create this void or this expansion in places that you want them. And so it's fantastic that we have places in the world like the World Trade Organization, places like that where you can adjudicate problems. You can bring IP theft. You can bring these complications that happen as these businesses are trying to compete in the global marketplace with other countries, with other companies, and find places to protect their assets, find places to find that space of trade. Usually we go over the hamburger, and the hamburger is a great example of how complex some of these things are. I'm sure that Webb has some components that may be produced in other places that he brings into New Mexico. Whether he's trading with Texas or trading with Mexico, he's going to be bringing in something here that we benefit from, and it goes out to the world. And so there's so many pieces of it, whether it's a resource like Namoga has in their producers, bringing that oil and gas to the marketplace. So it's a really exciting place to be, to see just how complex the hamburger is, or any one of these component pieces that we have in the panel today. So exciting time.
I'm going to jump in real quick. I'm going to pull that up because it's always the best way to kind of start these webinars for the consumer out there that just does not understand how trade impacts them at the smallest, most basic level. If you'll just give us your quick 1-minute rendition of how important a burger is in our lives.
So I want you guys to think cilantro. This is all about cilantro. No, if you can't eat cilantro, I'm still sorry for you. But
he loves cilantro. We already know the
I
story.
do. It's literally one of my favorite things to ever eat, and I can't believe some people don't like it. So I don't know what to tell you on that one. But guacamole is something kind of unique here. If you haven't tried it, you got to get down here and try it. Hopefully these videos are around the world and you guys are seeing the importance of trade. But let's take a look at a hamburger. You can do this with a pencil. There's a lot of ways you can look at a product and see how complex and dynamic it is, even if it looks simple. And you look at something like the USMCA, which is a trade agreement that basically just codified a lot of the tough edges, the conversations that happen in businesses talking to one another across boundaries. So when you look at something like the USMCA, you look at a burger, and you look at the trade agreement that USMCA defined around Canada, Mexico, and the United States. You look at a conversation about beef, something that comes from Mexico, Alberta, raised in Nebraska, and processed in Colorado. You look at the cheese, which comes from Wisconsin. Bacon from pigs born and raised in Manitoba, Canada, processed in Iowa. Lettuce comes from Arizona to our west. Guacamole, you have a ton of components. You have avocado from Michoacan, jalapenos from Chihuahua, garlic from Zacatecas, tomato from Ontario, I mean, you're getting a multinational conversation in just guacamole. So you go to ketchup from Ohio, you look at onions from Washington, mushrooms from British Columbia, and I like mushrooms on my burger, so I'm all about that. So basic conversation, simple conversation to have with anybody if they're really trying to understand how dynamic and complex your system is and what it looks like for your component. Have them look at a burger, have them look at a pencil, and you can see how complex something as simple as a burger becomes, and how important it is, because if we didn't have the comparative advantage that you see in growing those products in those locations, they have natural weather, they have other things that are comparative advantages or absolute advantages for them to make those products. And if we have to make them somewhere else that they're not best in, then it becomes more expensive, it becomes more complicated. We raise prices, we have to shift costs to things, we have to push those margins onto the consumer. All of a sudden the sneakers become more expensive for the single mother who didn't have to pay that before the tariffs were imposed.
So thank you again for going over that. It's always our favorite go-to graphic.
My pleasure.
You know, we are redoing the graphic because we have to add the New Mexico green chili so that if it does go around the world, we can start exporting our famous chili to all over the world. So we're going to add that little touch there. But you know what I love about that graphic that we do often is even when you get down to specifics, I mean, there's a red onion and a white onion in that burger. And what's so cool is the different places it comes from. You can really, really, as a consumer, begin to understand and appreciate the products and things that we use every day, from computers to burgers, and what it takes to put that together. And we don't have time today, but there's a great story about somebody trying to create their own chicken sandwich. I can't remember what it was. And we're going to talk about that in an upcoming webinar again, because the cost is what's huge here. And so having a panel like this today and talking about innovation really helps us with those costs. So I'm going to just jump right into the topic. I want to reach over to Webb to talk to us a little bit about the uniqueness and the innovation of what they're doing in the automobile industry. If you'll share a little bit about that with us, and let's talk innovation.
Sure, thank you. Pajarito was sort of born out of our CEO's experience in the hydrogen fuel cell business in the early 2000s, when he was an early, this was Tom Stevenson, our CEO. He was an early investor in a fuel cell startup locally that was sold to Intelligent Energy of the United Kingdom. So that was a very, very early experience for him that was very international in nature. The long and short of it is that unlike a lot of startups that scale to go global, this company was sort of born as a global company in nature because of the research that was going into fuel cells by the automotive industry. We basically had to start where the market is in automotive, which is all over the world. And so the very nature of our initial forays out into to visit with customers started in Europe, started in Asia. So unlike what typically happens where you start a small company and try to scale to get to a global customer base, we actually had to, and this makes life fairly complicated, we actually had to go where the customers were, which was everywhere they build cars. That's been a fascinating education. It's sometimes a little stressful, particularly in the midst of a global pandemic, but for the most part, what we've done is we've learned a great deal about how the automotive hamburger, if you will, works. And I was actually trying to dig for a couple of blow-ups. They have these wonderful blow-up diagrams that show just how international the automotive industry is. And it is absolutely amazing. There might be 70 countries involved in a car. It is just remarkable how many different components come from different parts of the world that go into final assembly of an automobile. So that's something to really consider whenever we talk about policy with trade. Punitive tariffs, may be a political tool to try to correct bad actors. But at the end of the day, the punishment is not meted out equally. I don't know if you want me to expand on that, but I don't want to take up too much time.
I'm looking for my mute, unmute. couldn't get my mouse.
I understand.
No, I think that's amazing. But again, just some really great things to pull out of what you said. First of all, going back to what Burley started with at the beginning of this webinar today was the amount of countries we're talking about that are involved in a process. That's really interesting. We need a car graphic now, Burley, so that we can share. But it's just amazing. And I think what's neat is, again, we go back to the topic today of innovation, and that's, you know, I'm not familiar with it, so it's exciting to learn about it. And so we're going to come back to Webb for some more on that. And we're going to move over to Bob with Team Technologies, and we're going to talk about innovation. I know you have a lot going on, so I'm gonna let you pick the innovation you'd like to talk about today. But I did have a little birdie tell me about some cool stuff you had going on. So Bob, take it away. Tell us all about Team Technologies.
Okay, well, we've been around for over 30 years supporting the national labs, the Department of Energy, and in particular the pulse power science work that's being done there. And so, so with that, we've built an organization here that we can pretty much design and build anything under one roof. We can build all the mechanical pieces. We've got a big machine shop. We can build the printed circuit boards, the electronics portion of something, all the the prototyping, 3D printing, all that kind of stuff. So under one roof, we've got the capability for innovation. And so we've tried to leverage that to take on new projects and to, really look at technologies. And again, back to let the market drive which ones you take on, because we're kind of almost like Shark Tank. We get people in here all the time and they say, I got this patent, and we want you to build us a prototype, and first thing we'll say is, we'll take a look at it. And we've had some that break the laws of physics, and we say, well, gosh, we hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it's not going to work because it breaks the laws of physics. And they say, yeah, but I got a patent. They say, well, patent office doesn't really look into whether it's going to work or not, so that's up to you to do. And so we try to let the market drive which technologies we really look at, and we get a look at probably a couple of different technologies a month. I would say people coming in here saying, I've got this innovative idea, and the first thing I tell them is, you got to go talk to Dr. Walsh over at UNM and learn the steps of technology and innovation and the road that it takes to do something. I mean, your example of a burger or anything, I mean, we're doing stuff that's really high tech and cutting edge, and so it gets extremely tough, but it can be tough for just a simple product as well. So as long as people understand that, and you get people with passion, and they think that you're going to build a prototype, and then next month you're going to be building 10,000 of these things in China and off to the races. And it takes perseverance. It takes people with a lot of guts and a lot of stamina and the ability to take on risk. I mean, risk is a big part of it. And I tell people all the time, on any project like that, pi 3.147, whatever that is, that can be used for a lot more than just finding as an equation. I tell people, take your best guess at what it's going to take in terms of time and money, and then multiply it times pi, and then that's about right, and so that's what we do. And some of the innovation that we really think has some legs is one with a new innovative way to produce ozone gas. And so when we first got this technology from the inventor, who had spent many years at Sandia, and now he's a consultant all over the world, when he brought the technology to us, we're scratching our heads and going, okay, ozone, what are we going to do with ozone? There's so many applications for ozone. And so we first started looking at medical applications for the possibility of using it to cure any kind of virus that's in a hospital room and things like that. And then we actually had the university do a study for us, University of New Mexico, and say, okay, we've got this tiger by the tail. What are we going to do with it? And after several months of study, they came back and said, water. You need to focus on water. Water. That's, a big deal. And so we did. So we shifted gears from medical to looking at water, and so we started looking at municipal water first. And the city of Albuquerque, I don't know how many people know that, but we actually treat our water here in Albuquerque with ozone. When we started pulling water off the Rio Grande, and there were certain viruses and things in the Rio Grande, they switched over to ozone. And so it's a very effective means of killing things in water, bad stuff in water. So we were kind of going down that road for a while, and then we kind of got onto the radar of the oil and gas industry. And so we had some guys in Texas say, hey, have you guys ever tried treating produced water with this ozone? And we said, no, we really haven't. So we're willing to try it. So we tried it. We went up to Farmington and Bloomfield and up to a saltwater disposal well, got some real nasty water that, when you open the lid on the thing, we had to open all the doors and windows in the building. This is pretty nasty stuff. And so we were able to effectively clean that in our bench test. And so we kind of pivoted to oil and gas, and now we've got 2 big systems sitting out here at our plant here in Albuquerque that we're hoping to finish. It'll treat about 95,000 barrels of water a day to clean that water for reuse for fracking and other things, so that you use less fresh water in those processes. So, but it's very useful in a lot of other industries. We're at the University of Nebraska last year, and we tested it on some agriculture, on some beef slaughterhouse water, and some poultry water, very, very nasty stuff. And we had a lot of success with that as well. So we're really trying, and we created a new company called Sigma to focus on that technology. And so Team's role is to kind of be the company that brings that technology up and advances it through the technology readiness level that we spoke about earlier. So, and we get calls from all over the world. We're talking to people in Canada, we're talking to people throughout Europe, in Latin America, and so it has the potential to be an international product. And the things we have to be careful with there is are we patented in some of those countries, and so that's kind of a tough thing with technology. You got to really watch your IP and figure out how to protect that as much as you can, but yet you want to do things with other countries. So it's kind of a balance act there. But anyway, we're excited about it, what we're doing, and we're always looking for new ways to integrate this into other potential larger systems and solve the big problems that they have, not only in oil and gas with the whole water situation, but with other industries as well.
So, Bob, we just learned a lot about innovation in the sense that it takes a lot of process and patience. And so, again, to the business owners out there, people that have a conceptual idea, whatever it is that you're working on, and you're thinking about that, what is that process? You never know how you could connect to innovation inside the trade world and how that can help. I mean, we just heard from Webb about, how many countries are producing the smallest little things that go into the vehicles. So you just keep an open mind about how what you're working on right now might be the next thing that is needed in our world. So speaking of things that are needed in our world to survive, we cannot survive without oil and gas and energy and all that stuff that makes us function every day. It helps us to function every day. And so, Ryan, it is your turn. You are in the hot seat to tell us all about this concept of innovation and how what you do really feeds into the trade world that we live in.
Yeah, so thank you. And I like that graphic. I've never seen it with a hamburger before, but I have seen it in a number of other contexts for our industry, where we talk about the different products that come from hydrocarbons. So even I've seen it with a number of different, literally in terms of all kinds of household products or makeup or vehicles, you name it. So we are a global commodity. And I think just kind of thinking about the oil and gas industry starting on an international stage, I actually think that the United States really has an interesting story to tell, since certainly energy forms change slowly over time, and certainly over the next 30, 50 years, we will see our society transform in certain regards with respect to how we generate and use energy. But oil and gas, hydrocarbons will still play a prominent role in meeting energy demands as well as being parts of products. And when you think about these international issues, the United States, thanks in part to some innovations that we've developed in our industry, has emerged as the top oil producer in the world. And when you talk about production of oil and gas, the three main producers globally are the United States, Saudi Arabia, and Russia. We're really the three largest players on the international scale. And there's obviously production in a number of other nations, but nobody really comes close to the top three of us. We're producing the lion's share of products. And one piece of technology that really helped the United States emerge and unlock the shale that is found in the Permian Basin has really been the combination of hydraulic fracturing with horizontal drilling. And that's an innovation that, you say the F word, fracking, it's a terrible sounding word. It's got an F, a C, and a K. So it's already got, it's close to, a word that we do not want to utter publicly. So it's just a terrible word construction to begin with. But it's been much maligned, I think, by people who are opponents of the industry without really understanding what this technology does and what it has allowed us to do internationally. And I think, by incorporating hydraulic fracturing with horizontal drilling, we've seen the Permian Basin emerge as the most prolific source of oil and gas in the world. And I think when you step back and think about that from either an environmental perspective or a worker safety perspective, that's actually a really great thing, since, like I said, the two largest other producers of oil and gas are Saudi Arabia and Russia. So if you do care about climate change, which I think everyone should, or you care about protecting workers, or you represent people who are advocating for higher wages for workers so that people can afford to send their children to college or have be able to have a balanced lifestyle. Having the United States be the largest producer in the world means we're really elevating the bar and the standards for the industry all across the world. We have the strongest environmental standards of any nation when it comes to the production of oil and gas. We're doing it safer and more sustainably, certainly than Russia and Saudi Arabia, but we're also doing it as well as anyone else. And we have some of the strongest regulations, period. We also pay our workers more than any other nation, and we have the highest safety standards for those workers. So when you think about the international scale, that much maligned technology of hydraulic fracturing, that's allowed the United States, the most really environmentally responsible producer of oil, to emerge as a top producer. And I think that's actually good news. If globally we're going to continue to rely on oil and gas products, don't we want to encourage that production to occur in nations that set the bar high and really raise the bar, rather than pushing energy generation outside of the United States and allowing Saudi Arabia and Russia and others to gobble up market share and really create a race to the bottom? I think that's certainly one part of this story of innovation and development. Two other big stories that I won't spend much time talking about are really recently water recycling and reuse are huge priorities for the industry. And so we've been doing quite a bit of work in that space. And over the last 5 years, we've really seen a renewed emphasis and investment in those arenas. So we've seen quite a bit of technology emerge, but we're also seeing the ability to scale that production up at a value to operators. And that's been a huge development. We have things like closed loop systems that allow our operators to make sure we're reusing and conserving a maximum amount of water throughout our operations. And I think that's a huge development for the industry. And finally, we have quite a bit of innovation occurring when it comes to reducing our emissions footprint. And so becoming more sustainable from a climate perspective is something that's a huge priority for the industry. And so methane mitigation, carbon capture, and figuring out ways to do more with less emission has been a huge priority for the industry for a number of years now. We've seen dramatic reductions in carbon emissions in the Permian Basin and the San Juan Basin. And certainly in the Permian Basin, those reductions have occurred along with a huge increase in production. So we're producing much more while lowering our footprint. So innovation is part and parcel of what we do as an industry. We can't survive in the oil and gas arena without being on the cutting edge from a technological standpoint and also economically. I mean, it's one thing to invent really interesting devices and toys, and it's another to be able to implement them at cost across operations at a large scale. And that's something that we absolutely continue to look for ways to gain that competitive edge where we can take technology and then scale it up so that we can get an advantage in our operations. And on that point, because the United States really does things differently, and I mean that in a positive way, we really have the most stringent environmental and worker protection controls in place. That requires our operators to really look for opportunities to be as efficient as possible across the board, because it costs more to do business in the United States. And as a result of that, we have to be more efficient than anyone else. We can't afford to be wasteful in anything that we do. And so innovation and development is critical to our bottom line because we have to innovate to survive.
So thank you so much, Ryan, for all of that information. Yes, innovation is definitely important in everything we've learned so far on this webinar. And it really hits me with, I think about supply chain. I think about all these small businesses, like Bob said a while ago, that you don't even realize they may have something that can be, can work into another project that's being put together, whether it's a vehicle or whether it's a burger or whatever. And it's just, exciting in hopes that we can get these businesses excited about learning about trade and how do they get involved. And with that being said, I wanted to just have Ruben maybe jump in for a few minutes before we move to a question, just to share with us a little bit about how can people get involved, to share their stories, and where can they go to learn more and ask questions, because they're going to have questions about specific products that they do.
Yeah, I love the topic today, innovation in particular, and the reality is that the world is changing so rapidly and so fast, and we've got to try the best that we can to create an environment where we can compete not just locally, but compete with other countries that are moving technologically very, very quickly, and in every aspect and in every sector of society. I mean, whether it's Ryan talking about the innovation of fracking, which just radically transformed the industry, or it's Bob talking about ozone and making water more palatable for us here in Albuquerque. I mean, these innovations really move humanity forward in ways that are just absolutely astounding to me at times. And I think we've really got to try to create an atmosphere and create an environment, both politically and in every way that we operate in government, to make sure that we have the opportunity to compete at those levels. Like you were saying too, remember, we're looking for lots of businesses. We've had a great response thus far. We're looking for businesses all over New Mexico who want to tell their story about how their business is interacting in respects of trade. In the trade industry, how they're trading with other countries, how tariffs have impacted them, what they've been able to accomplish in the last couple of years, how they're innovating. And so we want to go ahead and add some more businesses to the list that we've already been putting together. We have already shared some great stories in these webinar series, and we're also putting some video vignettes together to promote local businesses here in New Mexico who operate heavily in trade. If you're interested in that, remember, you can go to www.tradebuildsnewmexico.com. You'll find there our mission, a lot of stats, how you can get involved, how you can get connected with us, how we can serve you in a number of capacities. But really, just let us know if you'd like to do that. We really want to see you get involved.
Well, I know for sure that, Ruben's reach out and the whole team at Trade Builds New Mexico reach out is really to hear from the 1,000+ businesses that are currently working within the trade sector industry here in New Mexico, to tell your stories, share your stories, be an inspiration to other businesses. And we're pushing that a lot. We say it a lot because we really want to hear from you. We want to hear from Team Technologies and talking about, he's a local homegrown business. How do you get to that? How did he get there? These are the stories that we want to share with you guys. And that's why we reach out and bring in the panelists that we do. We want to talk about that stuff. So again, just a big push for that. We're going to continue to push that even after this series, because we want to continue to help New Mexico build through trade. Super important. So just an interesting question. We have a diverse panel today, but we have not really tackled the idea of e-commerce. And I want to move it over to Burley a little bit to just kind of tackle that a little bit. We can go a lot of places with e-commerce, especially today, but that's an important topic that I think we need to talk about, and maybe even get into a little bit about security and how are we protecting some of these incredible, innovative, creative inventions that are happening, around the world. How are we protecting them here in New Mexico?
So the internet, invented by Al Gore, is a fantastic way for businesses to connect to the world. And it enabled everybody around the world who has a computer and an internet connection, which is expanding every day, to connect to all the businesses around the world. And it's allowed knowledge and awareness of the innovations around the world to come to the front, so that somebody around the world, and I heard a rumor from somebody who's pretty well known in the oil and gas industry, that fracking was actually invented in New Mexico. So it's an amazing thing that we found here, that if we hadn't, somebody else would have driven the competitive edge. Those kind of things eventually make themselves around the world as an idea, as a technology. And as Ryan was mentioning, there are elements of technology that you look to find for your competitive edge. And so you bring in those technologies. The internet's a great way to find them. As Bob was mentioning, there is so much to it. My brother in college patented a five spigot keg top. So, not the most innovative thing. It's interesting, but it took a while. And I am part of a company that has hundreds of patents. It takes a lot to get some of this done. And there's a lot of process to make sure you're protected in the global atmosphere. And a lot of countries want to have prospering business cultures. And they know that that means that the hard work that innovators take to make a project come to life has to be protected, has to be understood, and has to be something that the rule of law or the courts are going to protect in that country. And if they don't protect it, then the companies that invest time in those countries will maybe pull back. They might not give that technology as freely to companies there. And you naturally see that. Sometimes you develop systems like the World Trade Organization. The United States has won every case that we've ever brought against China, for instance. Not many people know that. It's a bit of a misunderstood organization. They are incredibly good in some places at protecting some of the assets. We have developed a series of mutual awareness conversations with other countries and how to protect the IP, intellectual property. And there's certainly going to be complications. There are complications. There are individual actors who want what they want, and they're trying to do what they do. And so one thing that we're going to have to watch for is continually looking to make sure that our latest and greatest conversations on contracts, on enforcement, are as strong as they can be, and that we have bodies like the World Trade Organization and others that can go to impose conversations that mutual actors want to go forward. There's a lot of countries around the world that have really innovative products that want to bring them to the United States. And if they don't trust that those products are going to be protected while they're here, and vice versa while we're there, then they won't bring them forward. And that's going to hurt that country because they won't have that technology.
So there's so many key points in there. We could go another hour on this conversation. My mind started going right away. First of all, necessity is the mother of all invention. So kudos to your brother, because at that time in his life, he obviously needed that. So I think that's great. But it brings me to kind of come back to Bob for a minute. We're talking about the security of your incredible technology and these inventions and patents and all that stuff. What are some of the things that Team Technology does in working with you want to keep it secret at first, but then you want to share it with the world. So talk us through that process a little bit. I'm sure you're working with a lot of that type of invention and technology.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, we probably sign 3 or 4 NDAs, non-disclosure agreements a week, I would say. I mean, we're always signing NDAs, and of course, you always get into the back and forth of, is it a mutual NDA or is it a one-sided? And then if it, hopefully you put it in a drawer and never see it again because you trust who you're going with. But, you got to figure out, okay, well, should this NDA be, since we're in New Mexico, we want it to be under the laws of New Mexico. And you may be dealing with someone in Texas or someone in Oklahoma or another state, and they're going to want it to be in their state. So, there's always that kind of back and forth. And I don't mean to bring up a whole nother subject, but I really believe blockchain is probably going to be a good protective thing of the future for getting around all this, and really building the confidence and in contracts and in information. And even this product that we're building for water treatment, we're already thinking about how are we going to tie into blockchain and how are we going to provide the information that is needed to go forward in this world of the future and where we're going. So, I don't know a whole lot about the the e-commerce and all that. That's really not my world, but just, I think general protections are important. The IP is important. Sometimes in your patents, you don't want to put all of your secrets in there. You want to keep some of them trade secrets and just protect those as much as you can, because there's always ways around patents. And once you put a patent out there, then the world sees it and knows about it and can figure it out. So it's kind of a tough balance act, where you want to get your technology out there, you want to be talking to people, but at the same time you have to protect it. So it's definitely a balance act.
Well, those are some really, really good key points, I think, for any business owner and for anybody definitely in the trade world. So thank you so much for that, Bob. I think that's something we really probably haven't touched on too much, but it's an important topic, and people want to make sure that their innovations are safe and, until produced, and even after sometimes with, patents and trademarks and different things like that. So I think that's an important topic for sure. So something else that Burley brought up was, collaborations and the importance of, how we're working together. So Ryan, I have to ask you, I mean, you're working with, 1,000 plus probably businesses in your organization. And I mean, how important is collaborating when it comes to innovation in the energy and in your world in oil and gas?
Well, yeah, it's interesting because on one hand, we're in we have a lot of companies who are in a very competitive business. So our members, our companies are incredibly competitive when it comes to promoting their business interests. But at the same time, we also it's extremely common for a number of companies to be working on to own interests in a single well. So while there's huge competition that occurs among the industry and within the industry, there's also a huge amount of collaboration just in terms of people having business interests that are intertwined with one another throughout the oil patch. And so there's this interesting dynamic where people are constantly pushing and competing, but at the same time, they also have very intertwined and aligned business interests. So there is quite a bit of collaboration that occurs all across the board in our industry, whether it be on, we are just like a huge football fan. And so when you look at a team has success with running a new offense, and that's an innovation in football, then everybody the next year or two starts copying and running that. We do the same thing as an industry. You know, when one company, if companies are working together and they see one company is doing something that's working, then within a couple of years, everyone else starts to incorporate those philosophies and changes and innovations all across their business ventures. So it is a copycat industry in certain respects, where typically you see a lot of the smaller or mid-sized independent operators are the ones who will first employ some type of technology. And part of that is driven by economic necessity, where they're having to compete with some of the super major companies who have quite a bit of capital that they can expend and have more resources that are accessible than maybe some of those medium and smaller independent companies who will try something different or take a chance on a new technology. And then once they've proven the efficacy of that technology, then typically you'll see some of the super majors, the larger companies, then come in, and once they're confident it's working, they will come in and make huge investments and standardize it all across their business operations. So there's quite a bit of competition. There is though a lot of copycat that occurs, and I think that's inherent in any industry, and we see that quite a bit. And I do think it is interesting though that we have our super majors they invest huge resources in research and development, so they are at the cutting edge. But a lot of times it is really those smaller and mid-sized independents who are willing to take a risk on some type of new or novel technology because they need to in order to be able to survive for another decade or two. And that's interesting component is, while there's huge resources available to some of the largest companies, it's the more mid-sized companies who are maybe less risk averse that are willing to really employ something new. And that's always a challenge, even with the most research, when you're dealing with certainly huge investments of resources. It's when you're doing something new or doing something that no one else is doing, there's always a little bit of reluctance to be the first in. And so you tend to have these kind of more smaller operators who have that kind of tolerance for taking some risks for whatever reason, that really are the ones to chart a lot of the breakthroughs. And then you have the larger operators start to come in and adopt their innovations across the board.
So the common theme and thread throughout the whole conversation today really has been risk taking. And so I think that that's important. And as we start to wind down the hour, I want to jump over to Webb. I know that the internet, it might, it's a little unstable on your side, but we're gonna go with it. And speaking of innovation and some of the topics we've been talking about the last few minutes, our upcoming topic on Monday is supply chain. And technically that's kind of where you would fall into this. But talk about innovation in a supply chain. So, take us out with a little bit of how your company fits into that supply chain and innovation, and how you collaborate with others to create what would be the end product for the user.
Absolutely. This has been a remarkable education for all of us involved in the company. The automotive industry is like nothing I've ever seen. It's pretty staggering. They actually will take about 8 years to build a car from conception to final delivery of the first model year of a car. It's probably about 8 years typically for most manufacturers. They'll take about 4 years to develop and identify the technologies and materials that they wish to use, and then the last 4 years to push the engineering out to their supply chain. So they might do some of that in conjunction with their partners. They might do that entirely in-house and then push the process out to a supplier. So there's a lot of a lot of different varieties of this system, and then where you end up working in it. We're at a pretty innovative level, so we're working very closely. Let me not get in trouble. What does Deb Peacock tell me to say? We're working with almost every major automotive industry that has a fuel cell program, so I don't violate any NDAs. We even have NDAs that I can't even divulge the existence of the NDA. I hope I didn't do that. In any case, this is one of those things that as a supplier, it's a really interesting place to be, because we're at such a nascent stage with a very sophisticated technology that we don't have to fit within the sort of the box of the very complicated ISO processes, which are very expensive to implement. We don't have to do a lot of the things that somebody who's got a who's turning a crank and spitting out 100,000 of these things at a time. We don't have to do that, so that's nice. And that has been a modification of, it's been innovation on the part of the automotive industry that realizes that they have to move faster. They can't force people into a supplier-oriented box where they have to do the traditional things that suppliers would have to provide in terms of certifications and other things. We're getting close as the possibility looms, which is a great possibility of being qualified to go into a car. But that's a whole other conversation. Before we get away, I do want to add one last thing. Para los miembros de la audiencia hispanohablante, yo quiero ofrecer alguna ayuda si ustedes lo necesitan. I would like to offer, any entrepreneurial help to the Spanish-speaking audience, because these things are complicated. Entrepreneurship is complicated. We're in a neat space. I'm a huge advocate of the entrepreneurial community in town, and so if they would like to get in contact with the Hispano Chamber, and the Hispano Chamber can get in touch with me, I obviously can struggle my way through my Spanish and provide what little help that I might be able to provide, but I'm happy to do so.
So I have to tell you guys, today has been fabulous. I mean, 5,000 burritos ago from Bob, and NDAs that need NDAs, and our Spanglish that we're so famous for, and of course the original inventor of the internet. I'm telling you, it has been a great, comical, fun hour. I've appreciated every minute of it, and I love learning from our panel as always. So before we close out the hour, Ruben, can you tell us one more time where to find you? And I will close up with where they can link to us as well, to you guys. So Ruben.
Yeah, absolutely. You can email me directly at arguajardo, GUAJARDO @BBELibre.org, or you can go straight to the New Mexico Trade Builds New Mexico website, www.tradebuildsnewmexico.com. We would love to hear from you, and we definitely want to get your information and your business out there. So connect with us, please. Contact the chamber. If you want to go through them, they'll get in contact with us too. And we look forward to hearing from you soon.
And you can find us at www.ahcnm.org. We have a whole page dedicated to the webinar series this month, the LIBRE initiative. Click on there. You can go back and rewatch all of these trade seminars, webinars. And what's funny is you think trade, it's a snooze fest. No, folks. It is always fun, because you never know what's going to happen on this 1 hour webinar. We've had a blast with everybody today. We do appreciate you guys taking the time out of your busy day, because innovation is 24/7. So we know it takes time away. So if we can provide you that hour to relax and have good conversation and a cup of coffee, we do appreciate the panelists. There's a lot of collaboration and connections out there for everybody watching, and even for the panel today. And here at the Hispano Chamber, we are always excited to do that's what we do. Our mission statement is literally, we believe everybody is one connection away from realizing their success. And that's what we like to do here at the Chamber. So however we can help, we will. Please stay tuned. Our next webinar series will will be on Monday, and we will be tackling supply chain. And I'm sure that's going to be as exciting as today was. So we're happy to get that information out to you. You can go online and register, or you can just visit us live every Monday, Wednesday at noon for the webinar. Thank you again to the LIBRE initiative for your generous sponsorship and supporting this program. Of course, the entire Trade Builds New Mexico team, New Mexico Tech, and our panelists. One more time, Bob Sachs with Team Technologies, and Webb Johnson with Pajarito Powder, and of course, Ryan Flynn with NMOGA, New Mexico Oil and Gas Association, and our partners, Burley and Ruben. We've had a great hour. Thank you guys so much. Continue the innovation, keep New Mexico in the forefront, and you guys have a great week. We'll see you next Monday. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next week, everyone.